Hi, welcome to my channel. In this short tutorial, I'll show you how to model a plastic bottle cap in Fusion 360. Let's start by selecting a new sketch and select the XY plane. We're going to create a bottle cap at the origin of this XY plane. Select the circle tool and sketch a 30mm diameter circle. Finish the sketch, select the extrude tool and extrude the circle by 0.85mm. Select the top face of this extruded body and create a new sketch on it. Select the circle tool and sketch a 27.7mm diameter circle centered at the origin. Before we carry on, it might be a good idea to project the outer 30mm diameter circle onto the current sketch. We can do that by pressing P for project and then selecting the outer circle. Hit OK. Select the circle tool and sketch a 26.4mm diameter circle, also at the origin. Select the circle tool again and sketch a 22mm diameter circle. Lastly, select the circle tool again and sketch a 20mm diameter circle, also at the origin. Finish sketch. Select the ring portion defined between the 20mm and the 22mm diameter circles. Grab the extrude tool and extrude upward by 4.8mm. Zoom up a little bit to the outer cylindrical edge of this extruded portion, select it and create a fillet of 4mm. Hit OK and there we have the sealing portion of the bottle cap. Let's go to the Sketches folder and unhide our sketch again. Select Coil from the Create drop-down menu. Select the XY plane, move to the top view, go to the origin and set the diameter of the coil to 27.7mm. There we have an initial giant red coil. Set the number of revolutions to 2. Edit the height to 9, which immediately gives an error because the coil wire diameter is too large to wrap around by 2 revolutions within a height of 9mm. But don't worry about that error because it will fix itself as we continue to set the remaining parameters. The angle is fine at 0 degrees, so let's move on to the shape of the section. I initially selected an inner-facing triangle, but I changed that to a square section, as you'll soon see. Let's set the section size to 0.65mm, quite small. Set the operation to join instead of cut. Actually, the thread is too skinny, as the section size needs to be 1.3mm, not 0.65mm, as we're not specifying a radius. Also, let's change the shape of the section to square and hit OK. Zoom up to the upper edge of the square coil. Select this edge, select the fillet tool and give it a fillet of 0.4mm. Now before we hit OK, let's add a fillet on the lower edge of the square coil. Hit the plus symbol and give this edge a fillet of 0.4mm as well. Now the thread is looking a bit more realistic. Next, select the portion that defines the outer wall of the bottle cap. Select the extrude height to 13.4mm minus 0.85mm, the thickness of the base of the cap. Change the operation to join and hit OK. Now let's switch to the top view, hide the body for now, and edit Sketch 2 by right-clicking it and selecting Edit. We're going to cut out segments of the thread we just made. Select the Line tool and sketch a vertical line up from the origin to the 27.7mm diameter circle. Sketch another line from the origin, this time at an arbitrary angle. Select the Dimension tool, and I set the angle between these two line segments to 30 degrees. But actually, the real-life bottle cap has smaller segments, so perhaps a 15-degree angle would be better, or a smaller angle for the cutouts than for the sections of the thread, as in this case. Then, from Create, select Circular Pattern. Select the line segment that is angled at 30 degrees as an object. Go to the Circular Pattern palette and activate the Center Point selection, and then select the center of the circular design, which is at the origin, as the center point. The number of segments, or the quantity, defaults at 3, so Fusion 360 has ignored the 30-degree segment itself because I I only selected the second line segment. 360 degrees divided by 30 degrees segments is 12, so you just need to input 12 for the quantity and hit OK. And there we have our design divided into 12 30-degree segments. Finish sketch. We can unhide the body now and tilt the design to one side a little. Select the extrude tool, change operation on the palette to cut, zoom inside the cap and select every second segment that is defined on the ring area upon which the thread is formed. Then set the extrude distance to 9.5 millimeters. Hit OK, and there we have the cap thread with each alternate section cut out. Hide sketch 2. Let's rotate the design and have a good look at the thread. Okay, so the pitch of the thread looks a little too large, so let's go to the timeline and edit the coil feature. Let's change the number of revolutions from 2 to 2.5. Hit OK and see how that looks. I think that's looking a lot better. Rotate the design and select the top face of the bottle cap. Actually, before we carry on, let's just change the camera view from orthographic to perspective. With the top face of the bottle cap selected, select the fillet tool and add a fillet of 1 millimeter. So that's starting to look a bit more like a bottle cap. Now we want to knurl the outer cylindrical face of the bottle cap. To do that, select the face of the ring-shaped edge here and create a new sketch. We probably should revert the camera back to orthographic. Press P for project and select the outer ring-shaped face to project the 30mm and 27.7mm diameter circles. Hit OK. Select the circle tool and sketch a circle having a 29.4mm diameter, which leaves a 0.3mm radial gap from the outermost 30mm diameter projected circle. Next, select the line tool and change the line type to construction. Sketch a vertical construction line from the origin to a radial distance of 14.7mm, which ends up being on the 29.4mm diameter circle we have just sketched. Zoom to the top of the construction line, select the circle tool and sketch a 0.6mm diameter circle. Actually, we need to revert to the solid line type. So there we have our first 0.6mm diameter circle. Now go to the Create menu and select Circular Pattern. Then select the circle we have just sketched as an object, which is to be repeated as the circular pattern, and select the origin as the center point. Fusion 360 sets the number of objects to a default of 3 objects, or 3 circles in our case, but I chose 66 circles to represent the knurled ridges that form the knurled cylindrical surface. Hit OK, and now we can finish the sketch. Let's zoom into the peripheral area of the design, select Extrude. First, let's change the operation to cut. Then proceed to select each outer segment that is defined between neighboring circles. This takes quite a bit of time to do, so I'll speed up the camera. Go around and do that along the entire periphery of the design. So there in the extrude palette, we can see that 66 profiles have been selected. Now we don't want to perform the cut operation from the top of the ring-shaped face, but at a position offset from there. So let's select Start to Offset and enter an offset distance of minus 1.4 millimeters and set the extrude distance or cutting distance to minus 11 millimeters. Let's tilt the design so we can see how the extrude operation will go. That's looking about right. Hit OK and see what we get. Yes, so that's looking like the type of knurl you would see on a plastic bottle cap. Select the face of this rim here, select the fillet tool and create a fillet of 0.2 millimeters, which will form on the inner and outer circular edges. There we go, looking even more realistic now. This inner circular corner would also benefit from a fillet as well, I think, so let's apply a 1 millimeter fillet there. Lastly, let's give it a color. So select the entire design with the cursor, press A for appearance, search for a color of your choice. I chose a white pigment, and there we have our plastic bottle cap design completed. Check out my playlist here for more Fusion 360 videos, and also my other links for other engineering related videos. Thank you for watching.